says, and the wise man said, upon meeting the fighters of the Holy War, in Arabic, Jihad, and this is the Holy War, but for the Sufis, as we shall see, means something else. He said to them, ye have returned from the lesser war to face the greater war. رَجَعْنَا مِنْ الْجِهَادِ الْأَصْغَرِ, jihad, the small, the lesser war, to face jihad al-akbar, the greater war. And they said to him, the fighter said to him, what do you mean? He says, the war against oneself. Not the war against the other, but the war against oneself. This is Mahya the Buddha in his chapter on combating the soul. And this paragraph, which was later translated into Hebrew and was later quoted by the Kabbalists and indeed the Hasidic masters as one of the sayings of the wise man, was actually said by the Prophet Muhammad. How more intimate can you get in the intermingling of the faiths, where you have this Jewish rabbi from Saragossa bringing down the word of wisdom which stems from the Prophet Muhammad. I must tell you a story, I cannot resist, that I was in a Hasidic congregation at all this time of the year when we read in the synagogue the story of the Exodus of Egypt. And I was reading the interpretation of a Hasidic master in the 18th century. I told you that Ibn Buddha's book, though written in Arabic, was translated into Hebrew, and later on had a very abiding and deep influence on Jewish spirituality, both on Kabbalists and later on the Hasidic, who were inspired by Kabbalism, and we should see how this comes through. And this Hasidic master asked the question, well, why didn't Moses take the Israelites directly to the Holy Land? Why did he wander in the desert for 40 years after coming out of Egypt? He says that it was to prepare them through the lesser war, that is, they're confronting all the difficulties of life in the desert, confronting this also in a spiritual sense. Each one of us has to cross one's own desert, confronting the difficulties of the desert, so that they will be able to confront the greater war. As the wise man said, ye have returned from the lesser war to face the greater war, which is the war against the evil inclination. This is a Hasidic rabbi, Yosef Yaakov of Polonia in Poland, citing this in the 18th century, unaware that this word of wisdom is coming from Muhammad the Prophet. I was so taken back by this realization that I wanted to turn to somebody and say, you know what, you realize what this is? And there's no use in language. Even if I explain to them in Yiddish, they would be able. And all of a sudden my sight caught this Yemenite Jew with his beard. He still had his oriental cap on his head. He will understand. So I go up to him and I say, look what this Hasidic rabbi has said. He had returned from the greater war from the lesser to the greater war. And he said, do you know who said this? I said, no, it was Muhammad. So he looks at me askance. And so I translated to him into Arabic. He being Yemenite, understood Arabic. In the Jihad al-Asghar al-Jihad. And it sounded so Islamic to him, Jihad. He said, you know, you are right. But Muhammad has taken this from Rabbi Lapismagazine. So, you see, words of some Muhammad, they have a spiritual significance for all generations, for all times, and all places. The Aleph is just this perpendicular line, which starts off as a dot, which is sometimes represented by this little curve. This is a primordial point which extends downwards and is then captured, as it were, by the bat, which is, as I said, it's a concave. Can everybody see? Yes. Which is a concave curve, written like this. It's receptive of this energy, and which it reflects in the primordial point. There's a correspondence between these 2 points in the explanations of the Sufis. So that represents the emanation of spiritual energy and its reception by the human soul. And the same thing in Hebrew. The line is not perpendicular, but it's diagonal, starting from the top downwards. That's how the scribe writes it. And the primordial point, the superior primordial point, is represented by a yud, which actually joins the aleph. And this point, below the aleph, is represented by, again, by a yud. Okay? And this, the value of the aleph, these are eventually joined up. The value of the aleph is 1, represented by the fact that yud and yud, which are joined together, are 10. That's the unity of decimals. 1. Aleph also has the seen as 1. The bet in Hebrew, in its truest form, is also a circle, but again a concave semicircle on its side, actually the edge here, and the primordial point is in that's there. Although they appear very different in their graphic form, as you see it, as explained, they are identical in their subtle form, but in both traditions have very similar significations.